discussing Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver, a novel. I think one of the most important novels I've read this year. This is at the level of Cormac McCarthy's The Passenger. So I wouldn't say it's a epochal novel. I don't know if that's a word, epochal, but I felt like I always feel like there's one novel which encompasses a century in American literature. Moby Dick, 19th century, Steinbeck's Grapes of Wrath, or East of Eden, you can argue. One of those Steinbeck novels, to me, is the 21st century, the 20th century. And the 21st century is still early, but I think it's good to start early in a sense. You don't want to have a novel written by the end of the century that is signaling where the century is going. So therefore, it should be sort of in the earlier parts. And Moby Dick was written sort of in mid 19th century. Steinbeck wrote around this time 100 years ago. So that's why I think Passenger by Cormac McCarthy definitely fits into this. But I think this one is very close. There's three things that absolutely stand out here. Number one, it's the language. This book is written like a 20-hour hip hop song. And this is really amazing. This is the first time in any language, and I read English and German, so let's not be too excited here. But anyway, in any language, I think that I read, I've never actually read a book that is really a piece of poetry, but in a sort of a hip hop way. So this doesn't sound like poetry that you have to read whatever, Goethe or Edgar Allan Poe or something like that. This is contemporary, real time, streetwise poetry. That's why it feels like a hip hop song.
There are lines in the book, just a few examples. For example, is life like an NFL draft? Or do I have a say in where I go? Beautiful description of a situation of a young person and his expectations of life. Or he's using his 50-yard voice to describe somebody yelling. Or I have court-side seats to this situation, which describes a situation very close to, let's say, some people. So those kinds of things, I think, are good examples of this hip hop style narrative that Barbara is using. If you want to write a good story, don't just follow life, push back on it, which is a very nice example of the power that Barbara has just by using her words. And that's sort of the hip hop feeling you get.
Like you feel like you're watching a movie. And I think that's the language. It's the language. She's an unbelievably crafty language artist. That's the first thing. The second is the story itself. This is sort of, I would say, Forrest Gump meets Dostoevsky's The Idiot, and then there's a little bit of Mice and Men by Steinbeck. So there's this narrator, that is somebody you root for. The odds are against him, but he ends up winning in the end in a very beautiful way. And I think third, this story is an allegory of the United States, this country that is kind of raised like an orphan. There's no king, there's no monarch, there's no father or mother figure. The country has to raise itself by its own, pull itself on its own, by its own strings, on its own hair, out of nothing. Something today we take for granted, such things as democracy and self-ruling and all those things. Those weren't very clear when George Washington and the founding fathers created this country. So I think it's an allegory of the United States. I don't know if Barbara had any intentions. I don't know much about her. I've seen the lady in a YouTube video. She certainly doesn't look like a hip hop artist or anything. She actually lives in the Southern Appalachian region. She is from where this book is actually playing. So that's interesting. And she says in that particular speech that it is one of her intentions to portray her people, which is the Southern Appalachian people. And there's a character in the book, Tommy, that does that. So she definitely achieves that. But anyway, I wanted to point out those three things. This is the Not Even Wrong podcast. It's May 28, 2023. This is Krim Delco. For the year, we are up 64%. The market is up 9.6%. We're outperforming by 54.4%. There's no update today in terms of daily trading. It's a Sunday. So let's get into the book, Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. Fantastic book, highly recommended. And let's go through the 3 points that I want to mention here, and let's start with the story here. So the story is there's an orphan growing up in the foster system of Virginia, and it's a coming of age story. I don't want to give away too much. There is lots of drama, lots of stuff going on. There is in the end, it's the growth of a human being. It's a human being that is, like I said in the prelude, I would say it's a mix of, the idiot, Forrest Gump, of Mice and Men. There is a person whose odds are almost non-existent to make it in life, but he has a goodness of humankind in his heart. He is incredibly smart in a very basic way. He's not an educated person, but he has basic human skills and instincts that guide him through life. I would say he has a little bit of that Jesus type character that Prince Myshkin has in Dostoevsky's The Idiot. He transcends hierarchies, and this is important because it starts like this is a very immersive book, and after a while you forget about things like, oh, he doesn't have an education, or he's a drug addict, or whatever. It doesn't really matter because you still trust this person. You still think this person can pull it off. It's a beautiful story. Some people might say, well, this is too good to be true. It doesn't work like that. A person that has these kinds of odds never makes it. Well, Barbara disagrees. She gives this character the chance, and she lets the character evolve, and I think that's amazing. I think I want to talk about the second part of my conversation about this book, which is the Allegory of the United States. I think there's a lot of parallels. There's also mentions of, let's say, Moby Dick actually is mentioned in the book. So I think Barbara is definitely playing with the history of this country and is using this character as a symbol for the United States, an orphan that grows up. The odds are against him, but with his kindness, good heart, skill, hard work, and most importantly, a flexibility and a humility that is so powerful. That's the superpower of this person. It's his humility. He's the kind of person that even in the worst situations of whatever happens, he gets robbed, he gets almost raped, there's all kinds of bad things are happening. And this is not a bad, this is not, if they made a movie out of this, this would be, whatever the ratings are, it wouldn't be one of those rated movies you can't watch. So in other words, there isn't violence in a physical, sort of way, but there is a lot of violence around the narrative, and you can feel the violence, you can feel the ugliness of life penetrating out of the book. You can definitely feel that. So that is there, but nevertheless, because this person has, I would say again, a very healthy humility and a good heart and an intelligence that is pure, a pure intelligence, which is, if you want to get technical about intelligence, it's the ability to solve problems on the spot in a way that gets you further in life. And he has the ability, and this is one of the biggest surprises of the book. This person is able to navigate through life without taking anything away from anybody. Anything this person gets, he earns it, or somebody gives it to him voluntarily, without any pressure, no whatsoever. And that is beautiful. I think this is definitely an allegory of life and this country, the United States. If you keep doing the right thing, you will end up on the winning side of things. And let's just use this as a warning for where we are today in our political landscape. Ron DeSantis just announced his running for president. Hopefully, he can fix what's wrong in this country. And if it's not him, then whoever else gets elected, we need somebody to fix the finances. We need somebody to fix the bureaucratic industrial complex of this country and the complacency and the totalitarian and authoritative movements that are coming from both sides, the wokeism on the left and the right-wing sort of supremacist type people. We need to fight those people, and because that's not how it works. This is not Demon Copperhead is neither one of those. He is not a self-righteous left-wing, entitled wannabe, nor is he a sort of gun-shooting right-wing supremacist. Yes, there is guns involved. This novel actually takes place in Virginia, in the Appalachian Mountains of Virginia. So yes, there is definitely some shooting, and there's some football, and there's sex, and there's drugs, and all of that kind of stuff. But this is not what the story is about. These are all extras in the story, important ones, but the story is about heart, it's about humility, and it's about hard work, and it's about the ability to make it if you believe in what you're doing. And I think this is what's so beautiful about the story. I think lastly, I want to mention the language, which really stuck out. This is the first time that I'm reading a novel which is written like a 20 odd hours of hip hop. I mean, this is what it is. It's like I said, there are scenes in the book. I'm taking Santa Court. I have court-side views to this to describe somebody who's close to a situation, or you wanna write a good story. You don't just follow life; you push back. And again, just an amazing poetic way to describe a pretty complex situation. He's using his 50-yard voice as opposed to he's just yelling and screaming. So those kinds of things, it's a beautiful language. It really immerses you. And I think Barbara's ability to immerse the reader into the surroundings of the narrative is really second to none. I've yet to come across a writer that is that good, which is amazing. If you see her, she doesn't look like some New York hip hop, Brooklyn living or whatever. She lives in the Southern Appalachians. And maybe I want to add to maybe back to the second point that I spoke about, sort of the allegory of the United States as a country. There's some history here, and there's some very important facts. For example, where does the word redneck comes from? Well, it comes from the coal mining fights of the workers against the owners in the Appalachian Mountains, where coal is still being mined and definitely was mined way back. So there's a lot of history here. There's the mention of the tax wars after, I think it was after Lincoln won the Civil War, and the sort of the Appalachian moonshiners. They didn't want to pay liquor tax to the government for various reasons, partly also because they considered the new U.S. government not legitimate and things like that. So a lot of history. Barbara is very factual about it. It's hard to say on which side she's on, and I think she's doing a very good job at not being on any side. And I think this is the right attitude here, because this is not about are you a Confederate or a Yankee or anything like that. She's a true American Appalachian woman that loves her origins, loves her country, loves her people, and describes her people in a very beautiful way with the history attached to them, which is, you can argue, not very nice, or it's nice, or it is what it is. It's history. Things come and go. Coal jobs, they once were the blessing of the town, and now they're gone, and the town is falling apart. There's some mention of the opioid crisis, which apparently is happening, particularly in those parts of the country. I'm not familiar with those types of things, but it's an educational novel in that sense, that it tells you what happened back then. The actual content of the story and those factual in hints or descriptions of what happened. They are a nice addition to the novel, but I think the novel, again, it has a lot more power. It's transcending centuries. It has this Moby Dick or Grapes of Wrath type character that it can stand. 100 years from now, we will talk about this book. We will talk about the language which reflects, like I said, the modern hip hop culture. Definitely, and I don't care what Barbara or anybody thinks. This definitely reminds me of that kind of culture, and maybe the hip hop culture is taking its clues from writers like Barbara Kingsolver. Maybe it's this way. I don't know, but it's beautiful. It's concise. It's short and it's pointy and spicy and interesting and fun, and that's what matters. So to summarize, Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver, fantastic book, highly recommended. 3 things I point out in this episode. Number one, it's the story itself, which is beautiful, has that the idiot type character of Dostoevsky, this transcending Jesus type, a beautiful narrator that is of going through life in his own way and does it, I think, the way life is supposed to happen. It's his way and it's a beautiful way. And you can call it success or not. That's up to the others to decide. From his perspective, it's like the fish in the water that asks, what is water? Second, I think the allegory of the United States as a country, the orphan that grows up and finds his own way or its own way as a country and succeeds because of humility, because of hard work and skill. And third, I think the language is beautiful and it's a nice it's a new novel, fresh type of language that's being used in this book. Reminds me of the hip hop culture. It's a poetically written book with nice, beautiful, short, poetic descriptions of the scene. Thank you.